Republican presidential candidate Rick Santorum is now leading Mitt Romney in national polls, but he's losing badly to Romney among women voters. And here to talk about that is Karlyn Bowman of the American Enterprise Institute. Welcome, Karlyn.
Well, I'm delighted to be with you.
So before we get into why Santorum might be struggling among women voters, I wanted to ask you, does it really matter at this point? If you're Team Santorum and you're looking at this double-digit deficit among women voters, is there any reason to be concerned, or can a Republican presidential candidate do okay in the primaries without a lot of support among women?
Well, I think there are reasons to be concerned. The Michigan electorate in 2008 was much more male than female overall, so that should benefit Santorum a little. 56% of Republican primary voters there in 2008 were male. Republican primary electorates tend to be a little bit more male than female, so if Santorum's doing better with men, I think that's a bit of a plus for him overall. But in the long term, weakness with women is also a worry.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the things that might be contributing to his poll numbers here. Some things have come to fore as the media started to vet Santorum a little more closely as he's begun to do better in the polls. He wrote this book back in 2005, It Takes a Family, where he generally says, in the book that he thinks too many women who don't need to work outside the home do, to the detriment of the family and the detriment of child rearing and so forth. He's expressed some views on gay marriage consistently throughout his career. He's sort of distinguished himself as a social conservative. So conservatives have been aware of these views for a while, but the nation is becoming aware of them for the first time in some cases. Do women want to refight these culture wars? Is this a long-term problem for him?
I don't think they want to refight the culture wars. I think at this early stage of the campaign, when voters in Michigan and Arizona are just beginning to think seriously about Romney and Santorum, what they're looking at right now is tone and style. And I think Romney's style is a little more appealing, and his tone is a little more appealing to women, whereas Santorum appears to be a little bit more bellicose, a little more pugnacious, and that appeals more to men, and that's why we're seeing the gender gap. Traditionally, and interestingly, I wrote one of the very first articles on the gender gap for the Wall Street Journal back in 1982. Traditionally, men and women haven't differed significantly on the role of women. They have differed on some social issues like gay marriage, but never on abortion. And so I think at this early point, it's much more about tone and style than it is about issues.
What about his comments on contraception, which sort of not only gets at the values voters, but also the religious conservatives? He said things like, as president, I would talk about the dangers of contraception. Is this something, how do you think women, particularly Republican women, but also independent voters in swing states, how do you think they will view comments like that?
Independent, I think this is a problem with independent voters in swing states overall. This seems to be a settled issue in public opinion. We celebrated the 50th anniversary of the pill a few years ago, and looking back at that data suggested that the pill has widespread support overall. So again, I think he's on somewhat difficult territory, certainly not with conservative Republican voters. And of course, our Republican primary and caucus electorate tend to be more conservative than the population as a whole. But in terms of independence, I think it could be a problem going forward into a general election campaign.
I mean, and I ask, we've reached a point in society where it's not unusual for women to be running for president. Is he going to have to walk back views about how, too many women are working outside the home?
Well, actually, I think he's already started to do that. He's talked about the fact that his wife has worked for a very long time. She did stay home to raise the children for a period of time, but she's a lawyer. She's a neonatal nurse, and he's always supported women doing what they want in the workplace overall. But perhaps some of the things that he's written in his book and other places might come back to haunt him.
Okay, and you mentioned tone earlier, and I do wonder how much that has to do with it, because I think philosophically on a lot of these issues, Rick Santorum and, say, George W. Bush probably aren't all that far apart. But I don't think Bush struggled in the same way with the women's vote, right?
He had some problems, certainly in the general election with women. Republicans tend to have a problem with women. Democrats have a problem with men. So he did have some problems all along, but some of these issues I think could be problems for Santorum going ahead.
Okay, and also, are we being presumptuous in assuming that his problems with women have to do with these social issues? I mean, he has other views on the economy, on foreign policy. I mean, how confident can we be that it is, in fact, these social issues that have made some women a little skittish? I'm having some trouble hearing you. Could you grab the phone, please?
Sure. Looking more deeply, I think we learned that issues such as war and peace are bigger dividers of the sexes overall. Issues about the economy are bigger dividers of the sexes. And so I think we may be presumptuous putting too much weight on the social issues.
Some would argue that in the past couple weeks, the fact that so many issues have come to the fore, social issues have come to the fore, have actually helped Santorum. There's sort of a play to his strengths. We've had the Proposition 8 debate resurface out in California. We've had the Obamacare contraception debate. Do you think this could be a case of where this is helping Santorum in the short run, but if in fact we're still talking about these topics in the fall, it could hurt him if in fact he becomes the nominee?
If we're talking about these topics in the fall, it could hurt him as the nominee. But right now he's seen as a conviction politician, one who's been absolutely clear about his views. And the contrast with Romney on some issues, I think, has been a striking one. And that's where I think you see the support coming from.